Clay, welcome to our new beginnings, 75 billion light years or whatever it is from Earth. We're going to be starting Star Trek Voyager because we just finished Star Trek Enterprise in our hodgepodge plan of jumping around. This is the one that we've ended up on now. So here we are with a female captain.
The Sisyphusian,
little tiny ship.
The Sisyphusian task of covering all of Star Trek. Right when you get to the end, it brings you all the way right back down at the bottom. And here we are.
Right smack in the middle, probably. Although I did a revisit of a guest, the episode that came out before this one that's going to come out is I did a guest with Todd from Computer Resume, and we did Army and Bashir. And as I was reading through the little thing that I always read through, I was struck by how almost exactly in the middle of Star Trek that episode is. Out of like the 900 episodes, it's like 440 or something like that. It was interesting. Right to be right in the middle. This is a little bit post-middle, I guess, as we enter our middle age. So let's get into it. If you haven't heard the podcast.
Time well spent.
If you haven't heard the podcast before, this is the Penske Podcast, which is a strangely named Star Trek podcast where we are doing a critical story analysis of all the Star Trek stuff that's been out there. So we've done a whole bunch at this point. TOS, TNG, DS9, Enterprise, all the movies. And now we're up to Voyager. So here we are. I say this just because I think the people might be searching for a new Star Trek podcast. Maybe they love Voyager. This is our introduction to Voyager episode. So hello. If you're new, hopefully you'll stick around. If you're old, welcome back. We're continuing on, as I said before, with Voyager. So here we go. Voyager is the 5th Star Trek series. Created by Rick Berman, Michael Piller, and Jeri Taylor. It ran on UPN. It was the network's first ever series. It ran for 7 seasons in the US of A from 1995 to 2001. 172 episodes, 7 seasons. We're going to be opening up with a 15-episode first season with the pilot. Caretaker is what we're going to get to next episode after this. But this is our introduction. The whole reason that we're doing this is because we made it on Patreon. We made a goal. And Patreon supporters, if you want to support the show at patreon.com/The Penske File, you go there. A couple dollars a month. And then they enabled that we're going to do every single episode of Star Trek Voyager. And that's the rule, Clay. The catch to keep them hooked, Clay, is if we drop below 900, we're only going to be doing 8 episodes per season. Okay?
Oh, threats and blackmail and extortion.
Hold me to this. If we drop below.
All traits inherent to Star Trek.
My black heart shining through. If we drop below for the month when it calculates its thing at the start of the month, if we're below 900, wherever we are, we're just going to do 8 episodes that season. If we've already done 8, we're going to skip to the next season. So you might lose some of your favorite episodes if this thing goes off the board, right?
Boy. That's a real trolley problem there, I think.
Make sure the expiration dates on your credit cards are up to date. Make sure that your bank finances are in tip-top shape. If you love Voyager, if you don't care about Voyager, who cares what I say? Who cares about Patreon? But patreon.com/The Penske File is the best way to support the show, and it ensures that we cover all 172 episodes of this show. So, before we get into it, Clay, the final bit of housekeeping I have to say is that as this releases, the Voyager show, because we're past 900 on Patreon, is going to go to the podcast feed. So everyone will get that. All the Voyager episodes are going to be out on the main podcast feed at thepenskePodcast.com, the main podcast feed that you've been getting all the other stuff. As we do this concurrently, Picard Season 2 is coming out. Picard Season 2 we are going to cover, but it's going to be on Patreon, which is another reason for you to support the show on Patreon, patreon.com/The Penske File. If you support the show there, you're going to get a episode a day or two after the new Picard episodes air, only on Patreon. Maybe the podcast show will get a little bit of a tease. The podcast feed will get like a 5-minute tease of each episode, but the main show is at Patreon. So Voyager on the main feed, every single episode. Picard Season 2, only on patreon.com/The Penske File. That's it. Is that clear enough?
I will say, I think it is. I think it's very clear. I will say we picked the best time to start Voyager now that Voyager is behind its own paywall on Paramount Plus. It is now incredibly difficult to actually watch the show, which I'm sure will make it great for all of our listeners who are looking forward to watching along with us.
Well, if you were on the Discord, you would have realized that I think Nick posted that link to Vudu a couple months ago. You could get the whole series for $40 on Vudu, which is a pretty good deal.
Oh,
but yeah, Now you have to go to Paramount Plus if you don't have that, but we'll be watching it on Vudu. The only thing I want to say about Paramount Plus is I realized that its tagline is peak television, which is a great tagline for Paramount Plus because they have little mountains as their emblem.
That's good.
It's extremely good.
Very good.
Almost makes me feel like it's worth subscribing, even though the rest of their content is shit. So anyway, let's move on to Voyager. Talked about Patreon. We talked about Voyager. We talked about Picard. So now we're going to talk about Star Trek Voyager, which we're going to cover every single episode on our 1 to 5 scale. We rate every single episode, if you're unfamiliar, 1 to 5, 5 being the greatest episodes and 1 being the worst. And we're going to do that all the way through. If there are 2-parters in a single season that are called Part 1 and Part 2, we cover those as a single episode. So we'll have a little bit less than 172 podcasts by the time we're done. But anyway, Clay, what's your cultural understanding of Voyager? How familiar are you with this show in general?
Voyager came out in an interesting time in my Star Trek history because I was pretty young still, and I had gotten into Star Trek via the movies. I was not a huge TOS fan when I was a kid, but I was a big fan of the TOS movies. And that sort of parlayed into a like of TNG, but it wasn't something that I was watching every day or every week or whatever. But I would watch it and I did enjoy it and I became familiar with it. And so when Voyager started, I was like, okay, this is going to be the show that I start. I love Star Trek, I guess. I'm going to watch
the TV show is fine.
I'm going to watch this show from the beginning. And I think I honestly don't know how many I watched. Maybe the first season. I honestly can't even remember. It was one of those things where I was like really interested when it started. Great. I thought the concept was really cool. But after that, I just don't think it really hooked me very well. And I wasn't watching DS9 at the time. So this is probably around the time where I kind of moved away from Star Trek fairly consistently. I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, I think I wasn't watching Voyager. I would come back for the movies, or at least the first one. I guess I didn't see Nemesis or Insurrection in the theaters. Yeah, I think First Contact was really the last one that I saw as it was coming out. Yeah. And so, yeah, this was kind of my last entry into Star Trek TV, and it didn't really last very long.
In a real-time sense. Yeah, but now we've come back to it. But yeah, Voyager was designed as a way to fix DS9, interestingly. Like, I think that's one of the more interesting things about its conception.
Well, there's your first problem.
Yeah, is that they had a great series, but the executive idea behind it was that this station is not really Star Trek. You have to have a ship that's going places, and that's what makes it Star Trek. So
Sure.
DS9 was never extremely popular, but Voyager, with the launch of UPN and everything like that, had a lot of hoopla behind its launch. It was going to be a brand new Star Trek show, a female captain. It's got a brand new kind of ship. They're going to be gone. They're in a part of the galaxy where no aliens that we could possibly know are going to be out there. We'll fix that eventually, but we'll get to that when we get to those episodes. And so there's this excitement.
It's not working anymore, guys. Nobody likes the new ones. We got to go back. We got to go back to the drawing board. We're near the Borg, right? Let's bring the Borg. Everybody loves the Borg.
We'll Borg it up at a certain point.
Is Q in this show? Q seems to be a perfect pull for this show.
Yes, he's recurring in this one too. Not like DS9 where he's one episode. He's recurring in this. Yeah.
Okay.
So
we're gonna put Michael, Rick Berman, co-creator of the show. We're gonna put a lady in the captain's chair. People are gonna love it because, oh my God, her suit's gonna be so low cut. It's gonna be so low cut, and she's gonna have that hair down around her shoulders, and the boys will come running, and the girls too. I'm not saying the girls won't like it, but the boys are gonna come run to this show. We're gonna have finally a sex symbol in the seat. Yeah, sure, Rick. Whatever you want. Yeah, we can do that. No problem.
Keep cutting the checks, Rick. There's going to be a lot of Basic Instinct inspired shots of Janeway in the chair in the first season. They will eventually get beyond this. She will put on some underwear. Nice beaver. Just had it stuffed. So Voyager,
perfect movie.
Voyager is. Well, let me break down the critical consensus here. LA Times ranked all the shows and the movies, and Voyager came in 6th place. Vulture rated all the live action shows before Discovery came out, and it came 4th out of 5 in that list. The Nerdist and Movie
5
Phone.
being Enterprise?
What's that? 5 would have been Enterprise.
5 being Enterprise?
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear what Movie Phone
Movie
has
Phone
to
and
say about
Nerdist both said it was the 5th best Star Trek show of all time. Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 77%. Metacritic gives it a 66 out of 100 on Metacritic. That's where Voyager ended up. My thing about Voyager is I'll be interested to know if I knew more about DS9 or Voyager going in. I think I knew more about DS9 than Voyager. I know the big episodes of Voyager, but I don't know a lot of the middling ones that like are not sort of the Year of Hell, Equinox, like the big epic Voyager episodes that people all know. I'll be interested to see how I feel about it because it's extremely divisive as to what people like. Like, I think Voyager's a love it or hate it show, really. Like, I think that some people really like Voyager and it might be their first Star Trek and they find a kind of comfort into it. And other people, so that would be Sean Murphy in the first group. The other group are people who don't like Voyager and think it's a colossal waste of an idea going down the line. I'll be interested to see if I like Enterprise or Voyager more. I think I'm inclined to believe that I'll probably like Voyager more than Enterprise when all is said and done, because we're just coming off Enterprise and I did not like that series at all. I think that Voyager is going to feel more like the Trek that we're familiar with and kind of like of TNG, but at a lesser level than those shows that we've seen so far. That's my understanding of what Voyager is going to be.
It's going to be so interesting for me. Because, as I've said previously, one of the things that draws me into Star Trek is the Star Trek stuff, like the visuals, the uniforms, the Delta badge, the trappings that come along with the concept, which Enterprise didn't really have a lot of those. I mean, they kind of get to some of them, but it's, and Voyager is kind of like riding the coattails of both TNG and DS9 at this point, as far as that stuff goes. Yep. And
they wear DS9 uniforms.
I am interested
in the first season. They're cut like DS9.
Yeah. Excuse me. Those are Star Trek Generations uniforms. Although I guess no. Did they first show up in Generations or Deep Space Nine? I can't remember.
DS9 early seasons, right before DS9 got the great vest jacket look in the later seasons. It's the uniforms right before that period.
Right. I can't remember if those started in DS9 or if they started in Generations, because I remember in Generations they do that thing where people start slowly shifting into those costumes.
I think it's
so it starts with the
I think it's Generations had to borrow the costumes from the DS9 production.
That's right. Yeah, because Frakes had to wear one that like didn't fit him and it gave him a back problem or some shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm curious to see if this skates by a little bit more for me based on the Star Trek-iness of it all than Enterprise did.
Yeah.
Enterprise, I think there's a bigger buy-in for that show if you are not someone who is wholly committed to learning the history of the Starfleet and Federation and the brand. Yeah.
Sure.
But like, for instance, between Voyager and Enterprise, before we watched Enterprise, I could not have named a single member of the cast. I don't like character wise or the crew. But like, we haven't watched any Voyager. I have not watched Voyager in, I don't know, 20 years.
Yeah.
And like,
I haven't
looking
seen
at
any
the
since we
picture
started podcasting.
of the poster. Yeah, definitely. Looking at the poster, I can name I think almost everybody on this poster on IMDb. You've got Janeway, Tom Paris, Tuvok. I don't remember the doctor's name. Seven of Nine, Neelix. Just Doctor? Okay, all right. Chakotay. And I can't remember the other. I don't know I can't remember the other two, and there's a woman on there who I don't recognize. But
so there's the Black Vulcan. Did you get his name?
Yep, Tuvok.
Tuvok. Yep. Is there a short-haired woman on that poster?
Short-haired.
There's
woman.
no 7 on that picture, right? There's no 7 of 9. There's another.
There is 7 of 9 is in the middle.
Oh, okay.
There's another short-haired woman next to her who I don't recognize.
Okay, that's probably Kes, who's in the early seasons, and she's replaced by 7 of 9 in season 4.
I see.
And then who's left? The Asian guy?
Of course she is. Yes, I don't remember the Asian guy's name. And
lesbian?
I don't remember guys, after the first Michael, Rick Berman, co-creator of the show. I can find at least one problem with the first season of this show.
There's a lack of va-va-voom in these
the Asian guy.
Did you name the Asian guy?
The Asian guy and the Klingon
lady.
Woman. I can't remember her name.
B'Elanna Torres is the Klingon, half-breed Klingon woman. And Harry Kim is the ensign, the Asian ensign.
Kim, that's right.
Yeah. So
I knew it was a name like that. I just couldn't remember exactly what it was.
Yeah, so that's it. It's Janeway, Chakotay, Tuvok, Tom Paris, B'Elanna Torres, Harry Kim, the Doctor, or EMH, and then Neelix and Kes are the cast of the first 3 seasons of this show. Interestingly, I was reading all the things like Voyager is the Star Trek that broke the gender sex barrier. And I was like, oh, is that true? And I looked, there's only 3 women, and one of them gets replaced by another woman in the 4th season. So it's not like there's an overwhelming amount of females in the show. So I thought that was an interesting thing to say. But it is the first female captain in Janeway. And we'll see how we feel about Janeway at that point. But it's impossible to say like what this meant for people back 25, 30 years ago when there was a female captain come on. I don't care at this point.
Did you happen to watch that promo video?
Yes, you shared a trailer.
It kind of really shows the difference between how that stuff is handled now versus then, because now there's like an entire advertising campaign about the fact that Michael Burnham is the first female lead of whatever, and even though that's not true,
with short hair,
and in this one,
just narrow it down until you find a first for something.
And in this one, in that promo video, they talk about the first female Starfleet captain, and they cut to Kate Mulgrew, and she's like, woman captain, about time. That's pretty cool. And that's about all they say. And then they move on to the next thing.
Glad I got the job, gents. I'll see you on the other side. That was a pretty terrible trailer, I thought, honestly, that video that you shared with me. It really plays up the action aspect quite a bit. It's like this show is firefights and fist fighting and sex. It's like I don't know if that's going to be the case.
Have you ever gotten lost on the highway with your family? This show is the same, but in space.
Really cheesy, really terrible production values, and it didn't get me particularly excited for anything about Voyager, but it was interesting to see that, and it was funny. The illustrious tradition of Captain Kirk and Jean-Luc Picard comes a new breed of commanding officer, and it's Janeway.
That section, there's a certain level. Somebody else pointed out on our coverage of the finale of Enterprise that in the final, space, the final frontier bit where they go through all the different voices, they leave out DS9 is nowhere to be found in this like celebration of the Star Trek brand.
Yeah,
and in this trailer for Voyager, they say in the illustrious tradition of Captain Kirk and Jean-Luc Picard comes, Captain Janeway. And the shot they use of Picard is an over-the-shoulder shot over Sisko's shoulder from the pilot episode of Deep Space Nine.
When
so
Sisko
the balls
gets mad
that they
at
have, the balls to take the Jean-Luc shot from an episode of Deep Space Nine that says it all, I guess.
Yeah. I was an intern who threw that thing together, I think, over the weekend, unpaid, and that's what they ended up with. Yeah, but it's Janeway. Do you know anything about the characters besides their names? semi-familiar with them? Like what's
no.
Okay. I was gonna say like I was trying to pick like what's Tuvok's the Vulcan and stuff like that. I guess do you know why the Doctor is called the Doctor and nothing else?
I know that the Doctor is a hologram. I know that.
Okay.
Because I remember that from the first episode, and I also remember it from First Contact where he shows up.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he's in First Contact.
I know 7 of 9 is a former Borg.
Yep.
That's about it. I don't know anything else about. I know Neelix looks like he was a bad idea.
You might be right about that. So what's special about Chakotay, Tom Paris, B'Elanna Torres?
Well, B'Elanna I know is half human, half Klingon.
Yes. What is a group? What unites
Tom
those
Paris, they're in a ska band together?
They're Maquis members at the start of the series.
So interesting. Okay.
That is the not to spoil the pilot, but the point of this series is that before Voyager gets sent off a million miles away from home, and it's going to take 75 years, they get sent with a Maquis crew, and they have to join forces to get back. So there's a tension between the Starfleet officers and the rebel Maquis who are fighting against everything that the Federation stands for. And that's what those characters are.
That's fun.
It is. It's a good concept. They wanted to have... They couldn't just... Pillar was very specific that he didn't just want to retread TNG. He thought there had to be a new part of space, and there had to be some kind of conflict between the crew that would make this actually worth being different about. And I think that they did that. One thing I will say about Pillar and all the early spinoffs of Star Trek that I appreciate at this point is that they did try to push them in different directions for each series. There was like a very concerted effort to make each show different from the other ones that came before it. And Voyager, I think, is a good idea as a way to do that. Put them far away, try to get them to come home. How do you feel about new alien species at this point in Star Trek? Are you down for that? Or are you like, yeah, bring in more people, or do you want the old Romulans back?
I am more than happy to to expand the universe and see some new faces. However, coming off of Enterprise, kind of dropped the ball a bit there, I think, with their attempt to do that in Enterprise.
Would you say they did, though? Did Enterprise really try to push it that hard, do you think? I would have said that they stuck more to what we knew.
I feel like they started off trying to go for it. You got the Suliban, and you get the pregnancy aliens.
Oh, yeah.
And some other stuff like that. And then they end up they pull the ripcord on that stuff fairly quickly, I think. But I mean, even still, you still have the Xindi are a big part of the show. And I mean, who can forget the Nazi aliens who play such a large role in the franchise? So like, I like the idea.
Yeah.
Daniels, human, but still very alien looking in his blank face. But yeah, I like the intent. It seems to be the thing that they keep saying in these shows, where it's like, now it's all new stuff, and then they kind of bail fairly quickly. I'd be curious to see how quickly they bail in this show.
Yeah, I'll be interested in. It's a great. I love the theme of Voyager. I love the title and the concept. Like, it is a little bit coincidental that the ship that gets stuck and going on a voyage is called Voyager, but it's one of those things that doesn't bother me too much. But I like the idea of, like, I think without having watched any of this in a long time, I think that if I were hired to rewrite and reboot a Star Trek series, I think Voyager might be the one that I would choose. It's a pretty interesting concept. I think DS9 did a good enough job with it. I don't care about the prequel area of Enterprise. I don't like anywhere where that show was trying to go, so I'm not really interested. TOS is fine. I don't love those characters, and I think TNG is pretty much perfect the way that it is. Like, I wouldn't want to reboot it. But Voyager, I think, in a modern Star Trek context, I think could be really interesting if you had good producers attached to it. I think the concept is really kind of neat there, and it allows you to move in a way that you're not constantly butting against canon. Like, you could really embrace the fact that we're just not going to run into any aliens that you guys know. So this is all new and we get to do whatever we want. But you get to play with it's another show that it's separate. Voyager being separated from the Federation is what a lot of the episodes are going to like. How long do your values hold out when you're no longer near the civilization that uses those values is a big part of Voyager. Like, what do you cling to when you're separated from home? And I think a modern show could really do that pretty well. Not to say that Voyager didn't, but the general implication is that it's a kind of a middling Star Trek show. So take that for what it is.
Yeah, I I kind of feel like the idea of new aliens and stuff are kind of like the and and having new aliens and having this like clean slate in front of the show is kind of like, the Star Trek equivalent of young kids who are finally left home alone for the first time.
Yeah.
Where they're like, oh yeah, baby, this is it. We're finally, we can do whatever we want. And then they end up just doing the same thing they always do after they play video games for 10 minutes longer than usual. And so, so you've got like Discovery, which is like, we've got so many new things to show you, new technology that literally shouldn't exist. We've got new aliens. And what's that? No, don't worry. The Enterprise shows up at the end of the first season. Spock shows up and says, don't worry about it. And they do the same thing in Enterprise where it's like, we got this thing. It's called the Temporal Cold War. Oh my God, it's such a good idea. We've spent so long meticulously thinking out all the ins and outs of this plot line. You're going to love it. And then don't worry. The Klingons are here. The Vulcans are here. The Ferengi are here.
Yep, Borg
everybody you love is here. The Cold War goes away after about a season. It seems like I do really like the concept of this, though. I think that there is a lot of room there. But it is funny to me how it's like they push these shows into this new space, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
And they just kind of go like, I don't know. What do we do?
I wonder if Voyager is going to be illuminating about why that is, really. If it's just the fact that, like, is it a lack of confidence in what you've created, or are you just not sure that what you're creating is, which is kind of the same thing, like, is a lack of confidence in what you've created, or is it just the draw to go back to something that you already know is there that you want to expand on and see how it goes? No, we'll have to see. Star Trek Voyager.
Well, I mean, it's actually kind of an interesting idea when a show like this that's so removed from everything else for them to actually run into a familiar element.
Yes.
Because, it removes that element as well as much as the rest of the crew are removed from usual Star Trek stuff.
Yes. So
you could kind of theoretically do some fun stuff, even with things that are relatively well known. Is this all? This is a Ron Moore concept that got kind of like bastardized a bit, right?
The concept of Voyager?
Voyager, yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think it's a Pillar thing. Pillar and Berman, I'm pretty sure.
I thought the story was that Ron Moore, or one of those guys, Ron Moore wanted to basically Battlestar Galactica was what he envisioned Voyager to be.
He was hired briefly at the end of Voyager when DS9 ended and was sent to work on Voyager. It did not get along with the production process and quit after an episode.
Okay.
Him and Braga had a falling out, I guess.
I don't know why I thought.
Well, his criticisms that he's had are what we are going to get into. The problems that people perceive about Voyager is that it's not buying into its concept fully enough. It's not.
Sure.
It's not people are at each other's throats. There's limited supplies. How are we going to get home? Like, what do you have to do in order to try to get home? What kind of principles do you have to break? Voyager isn't that kind of a show. So Moore was frustrated with that, I think, especially after coming off the DS9 and to move into this. And I think just to wrap it up, one of his criticisms was if we have Janeway do X in episode Y, why does it revert to as if X had never happened in episode Z? Like, there's not a lot of continuity in this show, which it doesn't make sense seeing that the whole thing is a journey, right? So you
Right,
would
yeah.
expect some kind of growth along the journey, but I'm not sure that we're going to get that, just to put that out the way.
Yeah, you don't get the same having a show like this, which is literally if ever there was a Star Trek show that should be serialized, it's probably this one.
Right, which is why I would reboot it.
Yeah, but treating it like TNG in structure, not going to work.
Not going to work. We'll see. I'm optimistic. It's a long series, but
yeah,
I would imagine there's still some meat on the bone at Voyager before Enterprise, and they were completely burnt out and didn't know what they wanted to do with Enterprise. I think Voyager still had some meat there that could be used early on. So we'll see how it is. We'll see if Voyager ever gets a 5 from me. Enterprise never did on our scale of 1 to 5. I guess that's it. We're pretty much done. So just to recap, we're going to be doing Voyager, all the episodes, as long as the Patreon stays above that $900 goal level. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/thepenskyfile. Support us there. You'll get to ensure continuing coverage of all the Voyager episodes. You can leave your comments about upcoming episodes, and we read those on the podcast. And also, you're going to get our coverage of Picard at the $5 and up level. You get our coverage of Picard. Season 2, every single episode will be only available on Patreon. That's it. Clay, we're going to start. I know we didn't get as long of a break as you were hoping for between the series, but I don't know what else to do because I didn't want to. I felt like we had to lock away Picard, I think, just to see what happens there and to make it an easy enough thing to record at the same time. So we're moving a bit quickly into Voyager.
Honestly, it doesn't really bother me because we had a fairly decent behind the scenes break, I think, because we were so far ahead in our recording.
Yeah, we were 6 episodes ahead for Enterprise. That was it's like a month and a half.
So it doesn't feel to me like we are just going right into the next thing. So
okay. All right, that's good to hear. We'll see how this goes. We'll maybe have other people on, or we'll do supplemental things, I think, because I know that you mentioned Sean is actually interested in Voyager in some way, so I'll have to see if he wants to do something like that. If it's not an episode, do something supplemental to it. And then we'll go from there. Join the Discord as well if you guys are interested in talking to us about this stuff. Anything else to say about Voyager before we sign off, Clay? I think that's pretty much it.
No, I don't think so. Not that I can think of.
First episode, just to warn you now, is a double-length episode. So it's the hour and a half.
Yeah.
You regret your words now. Coming right back.
I regret everything I just said.
That's the stock. That's the standard, I think. And it also has the feature-length ending as well, but that's a long way away. So thanks, everybody, for listening. Clay, do you have anything you want to plug before we go?
In addition to Star Trek Picard on our Pensky File Patreon, you can also get access to the horror movie podcast that I do with Amanda called the Rotten Horror Picture Show. Our Patreon content for this year is once a month. We will be covering an episode. We will be covering a Stephen King movie adaptation. Last year we did the entire Friday the 13th series. This year we're doing I can never think of a good way to describe. I keep coming with like also ran Stephen King adaptations or
mediocre adaptations that didn't make the Rotten Tomatoes best of list.
Yeah, Amanda said the B team, the B team of Stephen King adaptations.
The sixth
but
man.
Even in there's some good ones. Yeah, we did It Chapter 2 in January. In December we'll be doing the 1990 It miniseries, and in the middle February is a Silver Bullet, and then after that the rest of them are going to be kind of random, getting us through the end of the year. But we'll be doing like The Dark Half and Children of the Corn and stuff like Christine, stuff like that.
You guys get all that stuff on patreon.com/thepenskyfile. That's it. It's the way that Voyager is happening. Voyager was not going to be a whole full-fledged adventure, but now it is because you guys are generous enough to support the show, and we like that. It also shows that you like the show if you want to support it. It's the best way to show us that you like the show. So that's it. Star Trek Voyager. We're starting next episode with Caretaker, and then we're doing 1 episode a week as we run Picard concurrently on Patreon. So that's it. We'll see you guys in the far-off distance of the Milky Way galaxy. I felt very insecure about whether or not all that terminology was right, but I'm going to go with it. I'm going to assume they're still in the Milky Way galaxy. I'm no astronomer. I'm more of an astrologer, if you would believe that. I think there's more to be said in the cards of the tarot than there are in these stars of space. That's it. Thanks very much, everybody.
If there's one thing I know about you is that you do not believe that.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'm excited for Star Trek Voyager. We'll see how long the enthusiasm lasts, but I promise you I will give you my all for as long as I possibly can, just like the warp engines of Voyager. So we will see you next week with Caretaker. See ya.